Deep in the mist-covered hills of ancient China, whispers of a mysterious creature stirred the hearts of villagers for generations. Some claim to have glimpsed a serpent of purest white, its scales shimmering like moonlight on water, a sight so breathtaking it blurred the line between the earthly and the divine. But this was no ordinary beast. Legends spoke of a spirit, a being of wisdom and magic, whose story would weave through centuries to become one of China's most cherished tales. This is the legend of the White Snake, a story where love defies the boundaries of the mortal world, where enchantment and destiny collide, and where the gods themselves watch with bated breath. Imagine a love so powerful it challenges the very order of heaven and earth. At the heart of this tale is Bai Suzhen, the white snake spirit, who dares to dream of a life beyond her celestial origins. She isn't just a creature of myth, she's a figure of compassion, curiosity, and unyielding devotion. But her journey is fraught with trials, from the skepticism of mortals to the wrath of deities who fear the blurring of realms. Alongside her stands Xian, an ordinary man whose kindness draws him into a world he never knew existed. Their love becomes a testament to courage, a defiance of fate that asks, "What would you sacrifice for the one you hold dear?" This isn't just a story of magic and transformation, it's a mirror held up to our own lives. The White Snake's tale resonates because it speaks to the universal longing for connection, the thrill of the unknown, and the battles we fight for what we cherish. As we unravel this ancient folklore together, you'll discover layers of meaning about loyalty, the clash between tradition and desire, and the delicate balance between the seen and unseen worlds. So let's step into the mist where legends come alive and where every twist reveals something profound about the human heart. The journey begins now. The legend of the White Snake has slithered through centuries, its earliest whispers found in the Tang Dynasty, when storytellers wove tales of spirits walking among mortals. Back then, these stories were fragments, hushed accounts of snake spirits, both benevolent and fearsome, passed down in market squares and temple courtyards. But it was during the Song Dynasty that the tale began to take its familiar shape, with Bai Suzhen emerging not as a villain, but as a complex figure yearning for humanity. Imagine travelers gathered around flickering lanterns, sharing accounts of a white serpent who drank from moonlit ponds, her form shimmering between woman and beast. These oral traditions were fluid, changing with each telling. Sometimes she was a trickster, other times a tragic heroine. The story truly crystallized in the Ming Dynasty, when writers like Feng Minglong collected these oral fragments and gave them permanence in his anthology stories to awaken the world. Here, Bai Suzhen's character gained depth, no longer just a spirit, but a being of loyalty and sacrifice. Feng's version painted her love for Xian as transcendent, blurring the lines between the mortal and divine. Yet even then, the tale wasn't static. Later adaptations, like the Qing Dynasty opera Le Feng Pagoda, added layers of conflict, introducing the monk Fahai as a foil, a guardian of celestial order determined to sever the bond between spirit and mortal. What's fascinating is how each era reshaped the legend to mirror its own fears and values. Tang Dynasty tellings often framed the snake as a cautionary figure, warning against the dangers of the unknown. By the Ming Dynasty, the story softened, reflecting a growing fascination with love that defied boundaries. And in later operas, the tension between duty and desire took center stage, asking audiences who was truly in the wrong, the spirit who loved or the monk who judged. This evolution wasn't just literary, it was cultural, a dance between superstition and empathy that still resonates today. Think of it like a river fed by countless tributaries over time. The core of the story, love, transformation, defiance remains, but its currents shift with each retelling. Even now, new adaptations emerge, proving that Bai Suzhen's tale isn't locked in the past. It's alive, still slithering forward, inviting each generation to find meaning in her shimmering scales and unyielding heart. The white snake legend endures because it taps into something timeless, the human hunger for stories that challenge the limits of what's possible. At its core, this isn't just a tale about a serpent who becomes a woman. It's about love that refuses to bow to the rules of heaven or earth. In a culture steeped in traditions and hierarchies, Bai Suzhen's defiance resonates deeply. She isn't just breaking divine laws, she's demanding that love be enough to bridge worlds. That idea, that devotion could overpower even the sternest cosmic order, stirs something universal, whether you're listening in a Ming Dynasty teahouse or scrolling through adaptations on your phone today. But the story's power goes beyond romance. It mirrors a central tension in Chinese thought, the push and pull between harmony and disruption. The monk Fahai isn't a mere villain. He represents duty, the belief that every being must stay in its ordained place. Bai Suzhen, meanwhile, embodies the chaos and beauty of bending those rules. This clash isn't just dramatic, it's philosophical. It asks whether tradition should protect or confine, whether devotion to order can ever justify crushing something as fragile as love. These questions aren't confined to ancient scrolls. They echo in modern debates about identity, belonging, and who gets to decide the boundaries of acceptance. Then there's the sheer spectacle of it all. For centuries, this legend has been a playground for artists. Traditional operas bring Bai Suzhen to life with flowing white robes and acrobatic movements that mimic a serpent's grace. During festivals like the Dragon Boat Festival, her story is recounted alongside warnings about spirits and the healing power of realga wine, blending myth with daily life. Even today, adaptations explode across screens, from lavish TV dramas to animated films. Each retelling reimagines her struggle for a new audience. The white snake isn't preserved like a museum relic. She's reinvented, proving that some stories refuse to grow stale. Perhaps what's most striking is how the tale bends to fit the times. In some eras, Bai Suzhen is a cautionary figure, a reminder of the dangers lurking beyond the human realm. In others, she's a feminist icon, a woman or serpent claiming agency in a world that denies her autonomy. The legend's flexibility is its strength. It doesn't just survive, it evolves, offering fresh lessons about tolerance, courage, and the price of crossing lines. Whether whispered in villages or splashed across global streaming platforms, the white snake story remains a mirror, one that reflects not just who we were, but who we're still becoming. Bai Suzhen is no ordinary spirit. She's a being of grace and contradictions, a white snake who sheds her serpent form to walk among humans with a heart full of yearning. Unlike the fearsome creatures of darker myths, Bai Suzhen embodies compassion, using her magical abilities not for mischief but to heal and protect. With a flick of her sleeve, she can summon gentle rains to end droughts or brew elixirs to cure the sick. Her powers a testament to the harmony she seeks between the spiritual and mortal worlds. Yet beneath her serene demeanor lies a quiet rebellion, a refusal to accept the rigid boundaries the gods have drawn. When she meets Xian, a humble pharmacist with a kindness as steady as the changing tides, her fascination with humanity blooms into something deeper, a love so fierce it defies the natural order itself. Their bond isn't just romantic, it's transformative. Xian, ordinary in every earthly way, becomes extraordinary through her eyes, his humility and sincerity mirroring the virtues Bai Suzhen herself aspires to. She isn't merely playing human, she chooses humanity, embracing its fragility and warmth despite the risks. But their love is a flame in the wind, constantly threatened by forces beyond their control. Society whispers about the mysterious woman who appears too perfect, her uncanny knowledge and timeless beauty stirring suspicion. And then there are the heavens, watching with disapproval as a spirit dares to blur the lines between realms. The monk Fahai, stern as a thundercloud, becomes the embodiment of divine judgment, convinced that Bai Suzhen's love is an illusion, a disruption to the cosmic balance. What makes Bai Suzhen so compelling isn't just her magic, it's her resilience. She isn't a passive victim of fate. She fights back with wit and courage, whether outsmarting Fahai's traps or enduring centuries of imprisonment under Leifeng Pagoda for the crime of loving too deeply. Her story challenges us to ask, who gets to decide what's natural? Is it the gods with their cold decrees, or beings like Bai Suzhen, who prove that love can be its own kind of divinity? Even in modern retellings, she's a symbol of agency, a woman, a spirit, a force of nature who refuses to be confined. Whether portrayed in traditional opera robes or reimagined in contemporary animations, her essence remains, a flicker of white in the dark, reminding us that some bonds are worth upending the world for. Xian is the beating heart of the mortal world in this tale, a humble apothecary whose kindness makes him an unlikely bridge between realms. Unlike the grand heroes of many myths, Xian isn't chosen by destiny or born with divine gifts. He's ordinary in the most relatable way, a man who brews remedies in a small shop, who treats his neighbors with quiet generosity, and who stumbles into a love story far beyond his understanding. There's a sweetness to his naivety, a wide-eyed wonder as he meets Bai Suzhen, the mysterious woman who seems to step right out of a painting. He doesn't question her sudden appearances or her uncanny knowledge of herbs. He's simply enchanted, drawn to her warmth like a moth to moonlight. But that innocence is also his vulnerability. When whispers begin to swirl about his wife's unnatural beauty, her ability to calm fevers with a touch, the way storms seem to part when she walks, Xian's faith wavers. Fear creeps in, not because he doubts Bai Suzhen's love, but because the world insists she shouldn't exist. Society's suspicion becomes a poison, and even the monk Fahai preys on his doubts, twisting his devotion into dread. Here's where Xian's humanity shines brightest. His struggle isn't just about accepting Bai Suzhen's true form, but about confronting his own limitations. Can a mortal heart bear the weight of a love that defies the heavens? Yet for all his moments of weakness, Xian's role is pivotal. He isn't just a passive bystander, he's the anchor that ties Bai Suzhen to the human world. Her love for him isn't some abstract fascination, it's rooted in the way he tends to the sick without expecting praise, the way he defends her even when his hands shake with fear. Their bond becomes a quiet rebellion, proof that mortal and spirit can meet not as predator and prey, but as equals. In later versions of the tale, Xian's character deepens. He's no longer just the man who didn't know, but an active participant in their fight against fate, whether searching for her after Fahai's imprisonment or raising their son with stories of her courage. What makes Xian so enduring is his relatability. He isn't a warrior or a sage, he's every person who's ever loved something they couldn't fully comprehend. His journey mirrors our own questions about trust, sacrifice, and whether we'd have the courage to stand by someone the world tells us to fear. In the clash between celestial rules and earthly devotion, Xian becomes the ultimate test. Can humanity, with all its flaws, be worthy of a love that transcends it? While Bai Suzhen embodies grace and quiet strength, her companion Xiaoqing brings a storm of fierce loyalty and untamed energy to their story. A green snake spirit with a temper as sharp as her fangs, Xiaoqing is far from a mere sidekick. She's the fire to Bai Suzhen's water, the boldness to her caution. Where Bai Suzhen moves like a whisper, Xiaoqing strides with purpose, her emerald robes flashing as she challenges anyone who dares threaten their fragile happiness. Her shapeshifting isn't just for disguise, it's a weapon, letting her flicker between a mischievous maiden one moment and a coiled serpent the next, always ready to strike. Yet beneath that fiery exterior lies a devotion so profound it reshapes her very nature. Xiaoqing didn't start as Bai Suzhen's ally. In early versions of the tale, she was a rival, another spirit who clashed with the white snake over territory or power. But something extraordinary happens as their story evolves. Xiaoqing chooses loyalty over dominance. She isn't bound by spells or forced into service. She stays, becoming Bai Suzhen's most ardent protector. When Fahai schemes close in, when villagers brand them monsters, Xiaoqing is the one who snaps first, her claws bared, her magic crackling like summer lightning. She's the unshakable voice hissing, "Let them try to tear us apart." What makes Xiaoqing so compelling is how she defies expectations. She isn't just a foil, she's a mirror reflecting Bai Suzhen's own hidden fierceness. In operas, their duets are breathtaking. Bai Suzhen's melodies smooth as silk, Xiaoqing's replies sharp as shattered jade. Together, they create a harmony of opposites, proving that strength isn't singular. While Bai Suzhen heals with herbs, Xiaoqing guards the door. While Bai Suzhen pleads for understanding, Xiaoqing dares the world to judge them. Modern retellings often deepen Xiaoqing's role, hinting at a love that transcends mere friendship. Whether portrayed as a sister in arms or something more nuanced, her bond with Bai Suzhen challenges traditional roles. She's unapologetically wild in a world that demands obedience, a reminder that devotion doesn't always wear a gentle face. And when tragedy strikes, when Bai Suzhen is imprisoned beneath Leifeng Pagoda, it's Xiaoqing who refuses to fade into the shadows. She trains, she schemes, she waits centuries if she must, because some bonds are worth every drop of venom in her veins. Fahai stands as the immovable mountain in this tale, a monk whose ironclad faith makes him both guardian and executioner. Clad in his saffron robes, he isn't some mustache-twirling villain, but a man convinced of his divine duty. To him, Bai Suzhen isn't just a spirit in love. She's a cosmic error, a disruption in the careful balance between the mortal and supernatural realms. His conviction runs bone deep, forged by years of meditation and scripture, leaving no room for doubt. When he looks at Bai Suzhen and Zhu Xian's union, he doesn't see devotion. He sees deception, a serpent weaving illusions to corrupt an innocent man. Yet Fahai's rigidity hides a paradox. He wields compassion like a blade, believing his harsh actions are kindness in disguise. In his mind, freeing Zhu Xian from Bai Suzhen's clutches is salvation, not cruelty. This twisted mercy makes him a fascinating antagonist. He's not driven by personal malice, but by an unshakable loyalty to cosmic order. Traditional operas amplify this tension, portraying him with a booming voice and sweeping gestures, every movement echoing his unyielding principles. His tools aren't just prayer beads and sutras, but divine artifacts like the golden alms bowl, gifted by the heavens themselves to imprison Bai Suzhen. These symbols reinforce his role as heaven's enforcer, a man who answers to higher powers. But peel back the dogma, and you'll find something achingly human: fear. Fahai's fervor stems from a terror of chaos, of boundaries dissolving. If a snake spirit can love a mortal, what stops demons from overrunning the world? His war against Bai Suzhen isn't just about her. It's about preserving a universe where lines don't blur. Modern adaptations often delve into this, painting him as tragically rigid, even sympathetic. Some versions hint at a past where he too struggled with desire, making his condemnation of Bai Suzhen a form of self-punishment. What makes Fahai unforgettable is how he forces us to question righteousness itself. Is he a protector or a tyrant? Does divine law justify crushing mortal happiness? His clashes with Bai Suzhen aren't just magical battles, they're ideological earthquakes shaking the foundations of tradition and love. Even in defeat or rare moments of doubt, he remains a haunting figure, a reminder that the greatest conflicts aren't always between good and evil, but between different kinds of truth. Hangzhou's West Lake shimmers under a sky that can't decide between sunshine and storm, a perfect mirror for the fateful moment about to unfold. Bai Suzhen walks the winding bridges with Xiaoqing at her side, her white robes blending with the mist rising off the water. She's spent centuries observing humans from afar, but today something pulls her closer. Perhaps it's the way the willow branches dip into the lake like brushes painting silk, or the distant laughter of scholars reciting poetry. Then she sees him, Zhu Xian, a young apothecary sheltering beneath a tiled rooftop, his sleeves damp from sudden rain. He's ordinary in every way except one, the quiet kindness in his eyes as he offers his cloak to a drenched street vendor. That's when Bai Suzhen makes her choice. With a whisper to the clouds, she weaves magic into the air. The drizzle turns purposeful, a curtain of rain driving Zhu Xian toward the very pavilion where she stands. This isn't just weather, it's an invitation, each drop orchestrated to bring him nearer. When he stumbles under the eaves, shaking water from his hat, their eyes meet. Bai Suzhen offers him her spare oil paper umbrella, their fingers brushing for a heartbeat. The gesture seems simple, but the air hums between them, charged with something neither can name. Zhu Xian stammers his thanks, oblivious to the way the raindrops avoid her sleeves, how her smile holds the weight of ages. What follows is a dance as delicate as ripples on the lake. Bai Suzhen speaks of herbal remedies, naming plants even seasoned healers might overlook. Zhu Xian's shyness melts into wonder. How does this elegant stranger know so much about his craft? Meanwhile, Xiaoqing watches from the shadows, her smirk sharp as a blade. She knows this isn't just curiosity. Bai Suzhen is stepping into a world that will demand everything from her. The rain slows to a hush, golden light breaking through as if heaven itself is holding its breath. By the time Zhu Xian gathers the courage to ask her name, the lake's surface has stilled into a perfect mirror reflecting not just their faces, but the first fragile thread of a bond no monk or god could foresee. This meeting isn't chance, it's alchemy. The West Lake, celebrated in poems for its beauty, becomes more than a backdrop. It's a living witness to the moment a spirit chooses mortality over magic, and a man's ordinary life tilts toward legend. Later, when storms rage and pagodas crumble, both will return to this memory, the taste of rain-sweetened air, the way the world narrowed to a single shared glance, and the quiet, terrifying thrill of stepping into a story neither can escape. Love blooms like the first lotus of summer quiet, inevitable and impossible to ignore. After that rain-soaked meeting at West Lake, Bai Suzhen and Zhu Xian find themselves drawn together with a magnetism neither can resist. She visits his apothecary under the pretense of seeking remedies, though both know her knowledge surpasses his tenfold. He brews tea with trembling hands, stealing glances at the woman who speaks of centuries-old healing techniques as casually as others discuss the weather. Their courtship unfolds in stolen moments, shared walks along misty riverbanks, hushed conversations over steaming bowls of congee. The way Zhu Xian's laughter grows louder, freer in her presence. Bai Suzhen, who once observed humanity from a celestial distance, now revels in its textures, the calluses on Zhu Xian's fingers from grinding herbs, the way his voice softens when he speaks of the orphans he treats for free. When Zhu Xian kneels in his modest courtyard, offering a betrothal gift of wild peonies plucked nervously at dawn, Bai Suzhen accepts with tears glimmering like dew. Their wedding is a tapestry of mortal and magic lanterns bobbing over the river, traditional red silk swirling around them, and Xiaoqing discreetly ensuring the wine never runs dry with a flick of her wrist. To the villagers, it's a joyous union. Only Bai Suzhen feels the weight of the unspoken. She brushes her fingers over the marriage certificate, wondering if the ink will stain differently when one bride is older than the dynasty itself. Their home becomes a sanctuary between worlds. By day, Bai Suzhen plays the dutiful wife, mending Zhu Xian's robes and charming his customers with her knowledge of rare tinctures. By night, she walks the garden in moonlight, whispering to the plants until they unfurl toward her like devoted subjects. Zhu Xian, blissfully unaware, praises her green thumb, never questioning why pests avoid their crops or why droughts skirt their land. Their love thrives in these gentle deceptions until the day a traveling monk pauses at their doorstep, his eyes narrowing at the way Bai Suzhen's shadow doesn't quite match the angle of the sun. The tension simmers beneath their happiness. Bai Suzhen's dual existence grows heavier with each passing season. She laughs at Zhu Xian's jokes while counting the years he'll never have, kisses his forehead while memorizing the pulse beneath his skin. When she cradles their newborn son, a child with his father's smile and his mother's uncanny stillness, her joy is laced with dread. For the first time, she understands mortality not as a curiosity but as a countdown. The idyll can't last. Heaven tolerates dalliances, but a family, that's a rebellion too bold to ignore. Bai Suzhen's secret hums beneath the surface of their domestic bliss like a hidden current, sometimes gentle, sometimes threatening to pull everything under. She tucks her true nature into the corners of their life, the way she flinches when temple bells ring too loudly, how she stirs remedies without fire, her fingers warming the water through sheer will. At first, these moments are easy to dismiss. Zhu Xian chalks them up to his wife's uncanny intuition, a phrase he repeats with fond bewilderment, but cracks begin to show. There's the afternoon an elderly neighbor collapses in the market, his breath rattling like dry leaves. Before anyone can fetch a physician, Bai Suzhen is at his side, her palm pressed to his chest. The crowd gasps as color floods back into the man's face, his wheezing replaced by steady breaths. Zhu Xian watches wide-eyed as his wife murmurs something about rare pressure points, an explanation too tidy, too swift. Then comes the Dragon Boat Festival, when the air thickens with the scent of realga wine and villagers hang pungent herbs to ward off spirits. Bai Suzhen grows paler by the hour, her smile strained as she urges Zhu Xian to join the festivities without her. The heat disagrees with me, she claims, but when he returns home early, he finds her coiled in the darkened bedchamber, curtains drawn tight against the sun's glare. The moment she sees him, her human form snaps back into place, but not fast enough. Zhu Xian freezes, the festive rice dumplings tumbling from his hands. For a heartbeat, the room thrums with unspoken terror. Then Bai Suzhen laughs, too bright, blaming a trick of the light, the wine, his exhaustion. The lie hangs between them, fragile as a spider's silk. Her magic isn't just slipping, it's evolving, deepening with her love. She catches herself performing impossible feats without thinking, mending shattered vases with a glance, summoning summer peaches in midwinter for Zhu Xian's ailing mother. Each act is a gamble, a flicker of her true self that thrills and terrifies her in equal measure. The closer she binds herself to mortal life, planting gardens that bloom overnight, singing their son to sleep with lullabies that calm even the fiercest storms, the more she risks exposure. And then there are the dreams. Zhu Xian startles awake one night to find the bed empty, the window open. He follows a trail of moonlight to the courtyard, where Bai Suzhen stands barefoot in the grass, her arms outstretched. Silver scales ripple across her skin as she dances with a wind that obeys her every motion. This time, there's no denying what he sees, yet when she turns, catching his gaze, the raw fear in her eyes stops his questions before they form. In that moment, he faces a choice far greater than believing in spirits. It's about choosing between the wife he knows and the truth hovering just beyond reach. The air itself seems to weight, heavy with the unspoken bargain all lovers make. How much mystery can a heart hold before it either shatters or expands? The Dragon Boat Festival arrives with a clamor of drums and the acrid scent of realga wine hanging thick in the air. A day meant to ward off evil spirits, now poised to shatter a fragile peace. Zhu Xian lingers at the threshold of their home, clutching a bottle Fahai pressed into his hands with solemn warnings. The monk's words echo in his mind, a test, nothing more. If her love is pure, what harm could come? His fingers tremble around the vessel. Part of him longs to hurl it into the river, but doubt has taken root like a weed in his heart. Bai Suzhen has been retreating all morning, her skin ashen, her usual grace replaced by a stiffness that even Xiaoqing's sharp jokes can't ease. When he finds her in their chamber, curtains drawn against the midday sun, she's coiled into herself like a wounded creature. "Husband," she murmurs, forcing a smile, "you should be at the riverfront with the others. Zhu Xian hesitates, then raises the bottle. "I brought you wine." For good fortune, the lie tastes bitter. Bai Suzhen's eyes flicker to the vessel, her pupils tightening. She knows. Realga wine reeks of sulfur, its golden hue laced with crushed minerals lethal to spirits. Yet the pleading in Zhu Xian's voice undoes her. If refusing feeds his suspicion, what then? With a slow breath, she reaches for the cup. Xiaoqing's hissed warning from the doorway goes unheeded. Bai Suzhen's love is a gamble she's willing to lose. The first sip burns like swallowed embers. She gasps as fire races through her veins, her carefully woven human guise unraveling under the wine's alchemy. Zhu Xian staggers back as her fingers warp into pale scales, her spine arching impossibly. The cup shatters, silk robes collapse to the floor as something sinuous and terrible erupts from within. A serpent of blinding white, its body thicker than a temple pillar, its hood flaring like a moonlit sail. The creature's eyes, though, remain hers, dark, intelligent, and brimming with a betrayal too deep for words. Zhu Xian's scream scatters the crows from the rooftop. He crashes into the doorframe, choking on terror, Fahai's warnings now a roar in his skull. Monster, deceiver. Yet beneath the horror, another realization dawns. The serpent isn't attacking. It sways weakly, its massive head drooping as if weighed down by sorrow. The wine is a poison, yes, but the greater venom is the shattered trust between them. Outside, festival laughter swells, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding in the shadows. Bai Suzhen's form flickers, caught between beast and woman, her agony not from the wine but from the man recoiling as if she's the nightmare and not the love that shaped her into one. Xiaoqing's arrival is a tempest. She wrenches Zhu Xian aside, her emerald scales flashing as she snarls. Was this your plan, to see her suffer? But Bai Suzhen's rasping voice stops her. He didn't understand. The words are thick, slurred by fangs, yet their forgiveness ruins Zhu Xian more thoroughly than any accusation. As the serpent's body convulses, he does the unthinkable. He steps forward. Not to strike or flee, but to gather the shimmering coils into his arms, his tears salting her scales. The moment hangs suspended, a man cradling the truth he feared, realizing too late that the monster wasn't in his wife's form, but in the doubt that made him poison their shared sky. The festival's drums fade into silence, leaving only the rasp of labored breath and the awful, beautiful understanding that some transformations can't be undone. Zhu Xian stumbles through the temple gates with the frantic energy of a man chased by ghosts, his sandals caked in mud, his hair wild from running. Fahai's monastery looms before him, its incense-heavy air doing nothing to calm the tremors in his hands. He barely registers the monk's startled glances as he collapses at the altar, babbling about serpentine coils and poisoned wine, his voice cracking like dry kindling. She wasn't human, he gasps, as if speaking the words aloud might dissolve the nightmare. Fahai listens with a stillness that borders on hunger, his fingers tracing the beads around his neck. When Zhu Xian reaches the part where Bai Suzhen forgave him even as her body twisted into something ancient and terrifying, the monk's eyes ignite with grim triumph. "You see now," Fahai murmurs, pulling Zhu Xian to his feet. "What you called love was only a spirit's trickery, but fear not here within these sacred walls. No demon may reach you." Meanwhile, Bai Suzhen wakes to an empty bed and a silence so thick it chokes. The Realga wine's poison lingers in her veins, her magic sluggish as she staggers through their home, calling Zhu Xian's name. Xiaoqing finds her clawing at the doorframe, her nails scoring deep grooves in the wood. He's gone to Fahai. The green snake hisses, her voice laced with fury. Bai Suzhen's knees buckle. She knows what this means. Fahai's temple isn't just sanctuary. It's a prison designed to sever her from Zhu Xian's soul. The moment her fingers touch the threshold's protective sigils, her skin would blister like parchment in flame. Yet when Xiaoqing offers to storm the temple gates herself, Bai Suzhen stops her with a look that could freeze rivers. "No," she whispers, "this is my fight." The journey to Fahai's stronghold is a blur of pain and determination. Bai Suzhen walks the mortal roads now, her powers dampened by wards hidden in the very cobblestones. Peasants shrink from her pallor, mistaking her trembling for illness, never guessing she's a 1,000-year-old spirit burning through agony to reclaim a single mortal man. When the temple's golden roofs finally gleam in the distance, she doesn't pause. The stairs scorch her bare feet with every step, each incantation etched into the stone searing her like brands. By the time she reaches the courtyard, smoke curls from her sleeves, yet her voice rings clear as temple bells. "Fahai, you have what belongs to me." The monk emerges, Xian shadowed behind him like a withered leaf. Fahai's smile is a knife wrapped in silk. "Belongs to you, he was never yours to claim." Mortal and spirit cannot intertwine, it violates the laws of heaven itself. Bai Suzhen's fists clench, her nails drawing blood from her palms. Since when do the gods begrudge love? She demands. The air crackles as her suppressed magic strains against the temple's wards, sending cracks spiderwebbing through nearby statues. Fahai doesn't flinch. He raises his alms bowl, its inscriptions glowing malevolently. "Love you, who deceived him with glamours, who let him kiss fangs without knowing." Xian whimpers, his face streaked with tears, and Bai Suzhen's fury wavers. What happens next isn't the explosive battle the monks anticipated. Bai Suzhen falls to her knees, not in submission, but in a gesture so human it stuns the onlookers. "I hid my nature out of fear," she admits, her voice raw. "But never once did my love lie. If you must punish someone, let it be me, not him." She extends her hands, wrists upturned in surrender, her gaze locked on Xian. For a heartbeat, even Fahai hesitates, then the monk's dogma hardens like cooling iron. "The law is clear," he intones, swinging the alms bowl toward her. As golden light erupts, Bai Suzhen doesn't resist. She watches Xian's face until the last second, memorizing the curve of his brow, the way his lips part in her name, knowing some chains, even broken, leave scars no magic can heal. The night sky above Mount Imei shudders with celestial storms as Bai Suzhen ascends its peaks, her white robes torn by jagged rocks and her breath ragged from days without rest. Fahai's last blow was crueler than any blade. Xian lies lifeless in their bed, his soul trapped between worlds by the monk's righteous poison. There's only one remedy, the herb of resurrection, a shimmering sprout of jade and gold that blooms once every 1,000 years on this very summit, guarded by deities who answer to heaven's strictest laws. Bai Suzhen knows the cost of stealing it. Her scales still ache from the temple's wards. But as she leaps over a chasm where the mist coils like waiting serpents, she doesn't hesitate. Let the gods call it theft, she calls it justice. The higher she climbs, the more the mountain resists. Cliffs tilt unnaturally to spill her backward, and avalanches of pebbles become cascades of knives mid-fall. Her magic, usually as fluid as river currents, now flickers like a guttering candle. Yet when the heavenly gods materialize, their armor forged from lightning, their spears tipped with comet fire, she doesn't cower. Bai Suzhen's first strike isn't with fangs or spells, but with words. "You protect a weed while a man's soul withers," she shouts into the gale. The gods' laughter booms like thunder. Mortals die, that is the order of things. Their indifference ignites something primal in her. If heaven won't bend, she'll break it. What follows isn't a battle so much as a dance of desperation. Bai Suzhen twists between spear thrusts, her body a blur of white and silver, but these are no ordinary foes. Every parry sends shockwaves up her arms, every near miss singes her sleeves to ash. When one god pins her with a net of constricting starlight, she does the unexpected, she stops fighting. "Take me to your masters," she gasps, playing the defeated rebel. The ruse works just long enough for her teeth to find the god's wrist, her venom dormant for centuries, flaring like acid. As he stumbles, she seizes his spear and drives it into the earth, cracking open the soil where the herb glows defiantly. Plucking it feels like grabbing the sun. The herb's roots shriek as they tear free, its light scalding her palms to bone. The remaining guards howl in unison, their forms swelling into storm giants. Bai Suzhen doesn't stay to fight. She leaps from the summit, plummeting into clouds that rip at her like hungry mouths. Halfway down, her wings burst forth, not the elegant transformations of her youth, but ragged, pain-fueled things that catch the wind just enough to turn certain death into a bruising roll down the mountainside. She lands in a gully, her body a tapestry of cuts and burns, but her fingers remain locked around the herb. Its pulse mirrors Zhu Xian's fading heartbeat, a rhythm she won't let still. The journey home is a fever dream of stumbling through villages where children point at the ghost woman, trailing blood and light. When she finally collapses at Zhu Xian's side, her hands tremble too violently to brew the remedy. Xiaoqing has to pry the herb from her grip, crushing it into a paste with hands steadier than her glare. For a scholar who fainted at the sight of scales, he's caused you a world of trouble, she mutters. Bai Suzhen's laughter comes out a sob. As the potion drips between Zhu Xian's lips, his eyelids flutter, not with the dazed terror of their first reckoning, but with dawning awe. Because when he wakes, the first thing he sees isn't a monster or a saint, but a wife who crossed heaven and hell to drag him back. And in that moment, Fahai's warnings crumble to dust. Zhu Xian's fingers brush against the herb-stained bandages on Bai Suzhen's hands, the silence between them thicker than the temple walls that once held him. He should be dead. The poison Fahai fed him was meant to sever his spirit from this world permanently. Yet here he is, breathing, blinking, his pulse steady under the warmth of Bai Suzhen's trembling touch. The room smells of crushed jade leaves and blood, the remnants of her desperate pilgrimage to the heavens written across her broken body. "You came back for me," he whispers, not as an accusation, but with the quiet awe of a man who's finally grasped the weight of his own worth. Bai Suzhen's laugh is a cracked thing, edged with exhaustion. "Did you think I wouldn't?" For days, their home becomes a sanctuary of murmured apologies and shared silences. Zhu Xian traces the fresh scars on her wrists, each mark a ledger of what she endured to pull him from death's grip. He doesn't flinch anymore when her nails glint too sharply in the lamplight, or when the tea cools too slowly in her presence. Instead, he brings her wild ginger for the pain, reads poetry to her as she drifts into fitful sleep, and presses his lips to the hollow of her throat where her pulse doesn't beat quite like a human's. Love, they learn, isn't about erasing the differences between them, but about folding those jagged edges into something that fits. Even Xiaoqing's usual barbs soften. She catches Zhu Xian one evening grinding moonflower seeds into paste, his sleeves rolled up to reveal bite marks from his own nightmares. "You're doing it wrong," she huffs, nudging him aside to demonstrate the proper mortar technique. He watches, then mimics her movements with exaggerated precision until her scowl breaks into grudging laughter. It's a fragile piece, but it's theirs woven from shared grief and the unspoken promise that no herb or holy law will pry them apart again. Then the rains come, not the gentle showers that once drew them together at Westlake, but a ceaseless deluge that floods the streets and sends villagers whispering of divine displeasure. The downpour drums against the roof like impatient fists, and Bai Suzhen's nightmares return, full of golden alms bowls and chains that slither like living things. She wakes gasping one night to find Zhu Xian already upright, staring at the door where muddy footprints gleam on the threshold, too large to be human, too deliberate to be accident. Fahai's message is clear: forgiveness was never part of his doctrine. The morning brings a delegation of monks bearing gifts of blessed river stones, each one carved with sigils that make Bai Suzhen's skin prickle. Zhu Xian accepts them with a polite bow, his smile never reaching his eyes, but his hands clutch the stones so tightly his knuckles blanch white. That night, he buries them deep in the garden, his fingers raw from digging. "We could leave," he suggests later, watching Bai Suzhen cradle their sleeping son. Her silence is answer enough. Running would mean surrender, and after centuries of hiding, she's done with letting others dictate what her love should cost. For now, they pretend the peace will hold. Xian teaches their boy to count using starfruit seeds. Bai Suzhen hums lullabies that make the candle flames dance, and Xiaoqing lingers near the windows, her green eyes scanning the horizon like a sentinel. The storm hasn't broken yet, but it's coming, a reckoning woven into the very air they breathe. And when it arrives, they'll face it not as spirit and mortal, but as a family. United, unbowed, Fahai doesn't retreat, he regroups. The failure of his poison and the theft of the celestial herb aren't defeats in his eyes, but proof of the white snake's audacity. If he can't strike at Bai Suzhen directly, he'll turn the world against her. His sermons in the village square take on a fevered urgency, his voice sharp as a blade scraping stone. A demon walks among you, he warns, pointing toward the apothecary's home where laughter sometimes floats through open windows. She bleeds your trust like venom, and her love is a mask for corruption. He twists every miracle Bai Suzhen has performed, the healed illnesses, the saved crops, into something sinister. What human can cure a fever with a touch? What wife never ages a day? The villagers shift uneasily, their superstitions stirred like sediment in a pond. When whispers aren't enough, Fahai wields doctrine like a weapon. He unfurls ancient scrolls in the magistrate's court, their brittle edges crackling as he reads laws penned when dragons still ruled the rivers. Spirits who consort with mortals disrupt the balance of yin and yang. He intones, tracing characters that gleam like fresh ink under his fingertip. The magistrate, a man more fond of bribes than philosophy, yawns, until Fahai slides a jade amulet across the table, its surface humming with trapped lightning. The heavens demand justice, the monk murmurs, and suddenly the law remembers its teeth. Bai Suzhen feels the noose tightening. The market vendors who once praised her remedies now cross the street to avoid her shadow. Children are pulled indoors when she passes, their mothers clutching realgar talismans. Even the river seems to turn against them. Fishermen return with empty nets, blaming serpents' curses for the dwindling catch. Xiaoqing bristles at every slight, her fingers curling as if around invisible throats, but Bai Suzhen quiets her with a glance. Anger is what he wants, she sighs, watching another neighbor hastily bury a mirror, facing down beneath their doorstep. Fahai's masterstroke comes at the harvest festival. When the village gathers to light lanterns honoring their ancestors, he steps onto the ceremonial platform, his robes blazing saffron in the torchlight. A test of purity, he announces, producing a bowl of water drawn from the Temple of Three Truths. Let the guilty reveal themselves. The crowd parts as Bai Suzhen approaches, Xian's grip on her wrist the only tether keeping her from bolting. The water bubbles violently the moment her fingers breach the surface, hissing like oil on coals. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Fahai doesn't smile, his triumph is too sacred for something as human as glee. You see, he whispers, and the whisper carries. Even the gods recoil. But Bai Suzhen isn't looking at the water or the horrified onlookers. Her gaze locks onto Xian, watching his face for the flicker of doubt she fears most. Instead, he steps forward, plunging his own hand into the bowl. The liquid stills instantly, clear as a mountain spring. Strange, he says loudly, how heaven judges only one of us. The defiance in his voice is new, forged in the crucible of death and resurrection. For the first time, Fahai's certainty wavers. He hadn't accounted for this, not just a spirit's love, but a mortal's refusal to renounce it. The monk's next move isn't born of righteousness but rage. That night, temple bells ring without human hands to toll them, a sound like bones rattling in a gale. Clouds gather not from the sky, but from the temple's incense burners, coiling into the shape of celestial warriors. Fahai's final argument isn't persuasion, it's force. The very air thrums with the weight of divine intervention, a reminder that some laws aren't written on parchment but etched into the fabric of the world. Bai Suzhen feels it in her bones, the scales are tipping, and this time no herb or plea will stay heaven's hand. The reckoning won't come with whispers or court edicts, but with thunder. And it's coming soon. The skies split open like a wound, unleashing a deluge not seen since the days when dragons still shaped the rivers. Bai Suzhen stands at the water's edge, her arms raised to the storm, her hair whipping like ink spilled in the tempest. This is no mere rain, it's a reckoning. The river surges at her command, its banks crumbling as waves rear up like glass cliffs, taller than the temple gates themselves. Fahai may have the heavens' laws on his side, but Bai Suzhen has the raw, untamed fury of the earth itself. She doesn't just want to breach the temple walls, she wants to scour them from existence, to wash every last sigil and scripture into the sea until nothing remains but the truth of her love. The flood crashes into Jinshan Temple with the force of 1,000 avalanches. Golden roofs splinter like kindling, and stone guardians topple into the frothing currents. Inside, monks clutch at their prayer beads as water sluices through hallways, snuffing out incense and swallowing sacred texts whole. Fahai stands firm at the altar, his robes drenched, his voice rising above the chaos in a chant meant to turn back the tide. But this isn't just water. It's Bai Suzhen's grief given form, every drop weighted with the years of hiding, the poison, the stolen moments with Zhu Xian that heaven insists she didn't deserve. The flood isn't just destroying, it's speaking. Yet for all its power, the water is indiscriminate. Villages downstream shudder as the river swells beyond its bounds, swallowing homes and fields in its hunger. A fisherman's boat splinters against a bridge, his cry lost in the roar. An old woman clings to a mulberry tree, her feet dangling above the swirling brown depths. Bai Suzhen doesn't see them, her gaze is locked on the temple, on Fahai's silhouette against the lightning, but Xiaoqing does. The green snake spirit watches from the hillside, her fists clenched as the consequences unfold. "Sister," she whispers, but the word drowns in the storm. The moral lines blur like ink in the rain. Is Bai Suzhen a wronged heroine striking back at tyranny, or has her rage made her as ruthless as the forces she fights? Even Zhu Xian, watching from a distant ridge with their son clutched to his chest, feels the sting of doubt. He knows the depth of her love, but now he sees its shadow, the way devotion can curdle into something monstrous when cornered. The flood doesn't care about innocence. It doesn't pause to ask which homes shelter believers or skeptics. It simply takes, as nature often does. Fahai's defenses crumble. His holy relics bob like driftwood in the rising waters, their magic short-circuited by the sheer volume of Bai Suzhen's wrath. For the first time, fear flickers in his eyes, not of death but of being wrong. If heaven truly favored him, why would it allow this? Why wouldn't the waters part for righteousness? The answer, when it comes, is deafening in its silence. The flood doesn't discriminate between sinner and saint because Bai Suzhen no longer does either. Her battle isn't for divine approval anymore, it's for annihilation. And then, a child's cry. Somewhere in the chaos, a toddler slips from its mother's arms into the current. Bai Suzhen's head snaps toward the sound, her fury faltering for a single, crucial heartbeat. In that moment, the flood wavers. The waters don't recede, but they slow, swirling uncertainly around the child like a predator reconsidering its pounce. It's enough. Xiaoqing dives into the maelstrom, her emerald scales cutting through the foam as she drags the child to safety. The action is small, almost lost in the cataclysm, but it fractures Bai Suzhen's resolve. The flood doesn't end with a bang, but a shudder. The rains ease first, then the river grudgingly retreats, leaving behind a landscape scoured raw. Jinshan Temple stands in ruins, its golden bells silent, its once imposing gates reduced to splintered teeth. Fahai kneels in the mud, his scriptures reduced to pulp, his certainty washed away with the rest. But Bai Suzhen feels no triumph, only the weight of what she's unleashed. The villagers will rebuild, the fields will heal, but the line between justice and vengeance, between love and possession, lingers like a watermark on her soul, indelible even as the floodwaters fade. Beneath the shadow of Leifeng Pagoda, the earth seems to hold its breath. The once mighty floodwaters have receded, leaving mud-choked fields and broken bridges in their wake, but Bai Suzhen's punishment is only beginning. Fahai's vengeance isn't swift or violent, it's meticulous. With the last of his divine authority, he summons the sacred bronze bricks from the temple ruins, each one etched with sutras that glow like embers. The pagoda rises not by human hands, but by the will of heaven itself, its tiers stacking one upon another like a cage being built around a songbird. Bai Suzhen doesn't fight as the first brick seals her ankles. She kneels in the silt, her white robe soiled with river mud, her eyes fixed on the horizon where Zhu Xian clutches their weeping son. "Look away," she whispers, though they're too far to hear. "Don't let him remember me like this. The imprisonment isn't merely physical, it's unraveling." As each new tier locks into place, Bai Suzhen feels her magic thinning like thread pulled taut. The scales that once shimmered under her skin turn dull, the voice that could command storms cracks into silence. The pagoda's inner walls pulse with condemnation, replaying her sins in flickering shadows. The flooded villages, the defiance of celestial law, the audacity of loving a mortal as equals. Yet the cruelest torment is the tiny handprint left on her sleeve from where her son last gripped her, a mark that neither time nor prison can fade. Zhu Xian's grief is a quieter devastation. He returns to their empty home, now stripped of the warmth that once made it more than wood and plaster. The herb garden withers overnight as if mourning its mistress. Their child, too young to understand eternity, keeps asking when mother will return from her trip, his fingers tracing the characters of her name on scraps of paper. Zhu Xian's hands shake as he lights incense at a makeshift altar, the smoke curling into shapes that almost resemble her smile. He'd trade his own heartbeat to hear her laugh again, to see her tilt her head just so when explaining some arcane bit of herb lore. But the pagoda's doors answer no prayers. Meanwhile, Xiaoqing becomes a specter haunting the edges of Jinshan Temple. She circles the pagoda like a comet trapped in orbit, her emerald scales dulled by rain and rage. Some nights she presses her palms to the bricks and whispers spells older than the dynasty itself, hoping to find a crack in heaven's design. Other nights she simply screams, a sound so raw it sends owls plummeting from their perches. The villagers cross themselves when she passes, murmuring about the mad green demon, but Xiaoqing doesn't care. Let them fear her. Loyalty has made her feral. Years unravel like torn silk. The child grows into a boy who knows his mother only through stories and a single portrait Zhu Xian commissioned before the flood, a painting that captures her smile but none of her wildness. Fahai, now an old man hunched under the weight of his own dogma, occasionally visits the pagoda to chant sutras at its base, as if worried his victory might still come undone. Bai Suzhen, locked in her amber of time, counts the seasons by the angle of sunlight filtering through the brick's narrow gaps. She learns the language of mice who nest in the pagoda's foundations and the cadence of monks' footsteps during festivals. The world moves on. Rice grows in the once drowned fields, new boats ply the river. Yet love, true love, refuses to rot. On the boy's 18th birthday, Zhu Xian hands him a jade amulet, the last fragment of Bai Suzhen's magic, preserved in the herb pouch she wore during her flight from Mount Emei. "She fought gods for us," Zhu Xian murmurs, his voice frayed like old paper. The boy, now taller than his father, studies the amulet's glow, feeling a warmth that shouldn't exist after so many years. Somewhere beneath Leifeng Pagoda, Bai Suzhen feels it too, a flicker in the dark, a whisper against stone. The story isn't over, not yet. The mountains whisper secrets to those who know how to listen, the language of wind through pine needles, the murmur of ancient stones shifting underfoot. Xiaoqing learns them all, After Bai Suzhen's imprisonment, she doesn't weep or rage. She vanishes into the wildest peaks, where mist coils like living things and the air itself tastes of forgotten magic. Her training isn't the disciplined meditation of temple monks, but something fiercer, older. She scales cliffs until her fingers bleed, lets winter frost crust her scales to toughen them, drinks from springs laced with mercury and moonlight. The green snake spirit who once relied on Bai Suzhen's wisdom now becomes a storm-given form, her every movement honed by a single thought: break what cannot be broken. Years stretch like shadows, but Xiaoqing doesn't count them. She studies the pagoda from afar, tracing the pulse of its enchantments, learning its rhythms. By day, it's a tourist's curiosity, its bricks rubbed smooth by superstitious hands. By night, the sutras etched into its bronze surface glow faintly, humming a warning to any spirit who dares approach. Xiaoqing bides her time, testing the edges. She coils herself around the base one winter, her body absorbing the vibrations of its defenses until she can predict the exact cadence of Fahai's patrols every third evening, always at the hour of the ox, his footsteps heavier now with age. The night she strikes, the air is thick with the scent of plum blossoms, their sweetness almost masking the tang of decaying charms. Fahai senses her before he sees her, a ripple in the temple's wards like a needle pulled through silk. He turns, expecting another petty spirit to chastise, and freezes. The creature before him isn't the brash young snake he remembers. Xiaoqing's emerald scales are darker, almost black in the torchlight, her eyes twin pits of cold fire. She doesn't hiss or taunt, her silence is sharper. When she moves, it's with a precision that turns the courtyard into a chessboard. Every lunge is a feint, every feint a distraction, because while Fahai parries her claws, he doesn't notice the venom seeping into the pagoda's foundation, her poison unraveling the sutras stitch by stitch. Their battle isn't the clash of armies, but a duel of wills. Fahai summons golden lotuses to bind her. She dissolves them with a whisper in the old tongue of serpents. He invokes thunder. She splits it like a river around a stone. The real victory, though, happens silently, a hairline crack spreading up the pagoda's western face, no wider than a thread, but enough. As dawn bleeds into the sky, Xiaoqing lets Fahai land the blow that sends her sprawling into the dirt. You see, he pants triumphant, heaven's law endures. She smiles through bloodied teeth. Behind him, the crack widens with a sound like ice surrendering to spring. By the time Fahai whirls, it's too late. The pagoda shudders, its bricks groaning as centuries of magic fray at once. The final collapse is almost graceful, a slow sigh of bronze and mortar parting to reveal a figure wreathed in dust and moonlight. Bai Suzhen stumbles forward, her white robes hanging loose on a frame gaunt from confinement, but her eyes are alive. The first face she sees isn't Fahai's or even Xiaoqing's. It's a young man's, his features achingly familiar, standing frozen at the courtyard's edge with an amulet glowing in his palm. Time bends. The son Bai Suzhen last saw as a toddler now towers over her, his breath catching as she reaches out with hands that haven't touched sunlight in 18 years. Fahai's cry is raw with something beyond defeat, its realization. The laws he swore to uphold didn't account for this. A spirit's love surviving decades of darkness, a child's devotion calling her home, a sister's fury outlasting even heaven's judgment. As the temple bells toll in chaos, Bai Suzhen doesn't look back at the ruins. She grips Xiaoqing's shoulder, her voice a rasp of gratitude and pride, then turns to the son she'll spend lifetimes learning to know. The victory isn't in the shattered pagoda or the broken monk kneeling among its remnants. It's in the quiet, unshakable truth that some bonds refuse to stay buried. Zhu Xian's hands tremble as he steps forward, his breath catching in his throat like a bird trapped in midair. The years have etched themselves into his face lines where laughter once creased his skin, silver threading through his once dark hair, but his eyes are the same, wide with wonder, brimming with a hope he'd long buried. Before him stands Bai Suzhen, not as the untouchable spirit of his youth or the prisoner of Leifeng Pagoda's shadow, but as a woman weathered by time and trial, her white robes dulled by dust, her hands raw from pressing against unyielding stone. For a heartbeat, the world narrows to the space between their outstretched fingers, the air thick with decades of unsaid words. When their hands finally meet, it's not a spark of magic that passes between them, but something quieter, more profound. The warmth of skin on skin, the grounding weight of reality after years of ghosts. Zhu Xian's fingers trace the jagged edges of her knuckles, the calluses earned not from spells but from survival. "You're real," he whispers, as if saying it louder might shatter the moment. Bai Suzhen's laugh is a fractured thing, half sob, as she pulls him into an embrace that crushes the breath from them both. Her scent is different now, less lotus and rain, more iron and earth, but the way she tucks her face into the curve of his shoulder is achingly familiar. Their son watches from a respectful distance, the jade amulet pulsing in his grip like a second heartbeat. He'd grown up on stories of his mother's courage, her beauty, her otherworldly grace, but nothing could have prepared him for the raw humanity of this moment. The way his father's shoulders shake with silent tears, the way Bai Suzhen's fingers clutch at the back of his robe as if fearing he'll dissolve into mist. It's Xiaoqing who breaks the spell, nudging the young man forward with a firm hand between his shoulder blades. "Go on," she murmurs, her voice roughened by years of solitude. "She's waited a lifetime to see you." Bai Suzhen's breath hitches as her son approaches, his features a mirror of Zhu Xian's youth but with her sharpness in the set of his jaw. When he bows, a gesture of respect, of tentative connection, she catches his wrists and pulls him into the circle of her arms. No words pass between them, none are needed. The weight of his head against her shoulder, the way his hands fist in the fabric of her sleeves, speak louder than any apology or forgiveness could. Around them, the ruins of Leifeng Pagoda hum with fading magic, its once imposing silhouette now just broken teeth against the dawn sky. The reunion isn't perfect. There are gaps too wide to bridge in a day, years of birthdays missed, childhood fevers endured without her touch, questions neither parent can answer fully. But as they walk away from the wreckage, Zhu Xian's arms slung around Bai Suzhen's waist, their son matching his stride to theirs, something unbroken shines through the cracks. Love, it seems, isn't measured in years spent together, but in the quiet acts of return. The way Zhu Xian still knows to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear when the wind blows, the way Bai Suzhen's fingers find the pulse at his wrist without thinking, as if to reassure herself his heart still beats. And when their son slips his hand into hers, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, Bai Suzhen realizes with a jolt that the story doesn't end with reunion, it begins anew. Behind them, Fahai kneels in the rubble, his robes stained with dirt, his gaze fixed on the retreating figures. The monks whisper of punishment, of heaven's wrath for his failure, but the old man barely hears them. What lingers isn't regret or fury, but a dawning, unsettling truth. The bonds he'd spent a lifetime trying to sever weren't unnatural. They were the most human thing of all. The legend of the white snake slithers far beyond a simple love story. It coils around the deepest anxieties and yearnings of the human spirit, revealing itself as a mirror to societal struggles that transcend time. Bai Suzhen's serpent nature isn't just a plot device, it's a deliberate challenge to traditional notions of femininity. In a world where women were often confined to rigid roles, her duality, both tender healer and fearsome force, embodies the untamable power society feared in women. She's neither the docile maiden nor the monstrous seductress of older tales, but something far more revolutionary. A woman who refuses to apologize for her strength. Her magic isn't just supernatural, it's a metaphor for the quiet, often suppressed brilliance of women who have been told to dim their light. When she brews cures or commands storms, it's a defiance of the expectation that women should be passive recipients of fate, not architects of their own destinies. The legend's critique of dogma cuts even deeper. Fahai isn't just an antagonist, he's the personification of institutional rigidity, a man so devoted to rules that he can't recognize the humanity in the other. His fervor to separate Bai Suzhen and Zhu Xian mirrors historical and modern struggles against systems that dictate who can love whom, which lives are deemed valid, and who gets to draw those lines. The flood Bai Suzhen unleashes isn't merely revenge, it's the inevitable eruption when oppression bottles up natural forces too long. Yet the story doesn't let her off the hook. The collateral damage of her rage forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. Can justice ever be truly just if it drowns the innocent along with the guilty? The tale refuses easy answers, instead showing both the necessity and the cost of dismantling unjust systems. Love in this legend isn't the sanitized fairy tale version. It's messy, sacrificial, and defiant. Bai Suzhen and Zhu Xian's bond thrives precisely because it exists in the space between worlds, not in spite of it. Their love isn't about erasing differences but embracing them, a radical notion in any era. When Zhu Xian chooses Bai Suzhen even after seeing her true form, it's a rejection of the idea that love must fit into neat categories. This isn't just romance, it's a manifesto against prejudice, showing that understanding doesn't come from sameness but from the courage to stand together in the face of othering. The white snake's endurance as a cultural touchstone lies in its ability to adapt while keeping these core truths intact. Modern retellings often amplify Bai Suzhen's agency, turning her into a symbol of resistance for marginalized communities. In some interpretations, her flood becomes a protest against modern injustices, her scales a badge of pride for those told to hide their true selves. The story's magic isn't in its spells or serpent transformations, it's in how a centuries-old tale can still hiss with relevance, reminding us that the fight for love and acceptance is never truly won, only continually renewed. At the heart of the legend of the white snake lies a collision of worldviews where Taoist fluidity brushes against Buddhist detachment and Confucian order. Bai Suzhen's very existence defies categorization, embodying the Taoist ideal of Zeren or natural spontaneity. She isn't merely a spirit pretending to be human. She becomes human through her desires, her love, her flaws. Taoism celebrates this transformative power, this blurring of boundaries between the celestial and the earthly. Her floods aren't just rage, they're the unchecked kai of nature, a reminder that the universe resists rigid containment. Yet the story doesn't let Taoism off unscathed. Bai Suzhen's fury, while righteous, also drowns the innocent, echoing the Taoist paradox: can true harmony exist if it's forced? Buddhism enters through Fahai's saffron robes and his ironclad adherence to Dharma. His war against Bai Suzhen isn't personal, it's doctrinal. To him, her love for Zhu Xian is maya, illusion, a distraction from spiritual liberation. The monk's obsession with separating mortal and spirit mirrors Buddhism's emphasis on detachment from worldly attachments. But the tale twists this teaching into a question: is Fahai's rigid enforcement of dogma itself a form of attachment? His inability to bend, to see the compassion in Bai Suzhen's actions, ultimately cracks his moral authority like the sutras on Leifeng Pagoda's crumbling bricks. The story suggests that enlightenment isn't found in rulebooks but in the messy, aching space between precept and practice. Confucianism lingers in the background, its invisible hand shaping the societal pressures Zhu Xian faces. The villagers' whispers, the magistrates' edicts, all reflect Confucian hierarchy's emphasis on propriety and roles. A mortal's place is with mortals, spirits belong beyond the veil. Bai Suzhen's greatest crime in this framework isn't deception but disorder. She upends the natural hierarchy by loving a human as an equal, even bearing his child, a union that threatens the carefully constructed social fabric. Yet the story's brilliance lies in how it pits Confucian rigidity against its own virtue of ren, or benevolence. Zhu Xian's final defiance, choosing his family over societal approval, becomes a quiet revolution, proving that humaneness sometimes means breaking the very rules meant to uphold it. The legend's philosophical tension isn't about which tradition is right, but how each falters when taken to extremes. Taoist freedom needs Buddhist mindfulness to curb its chaos. Buddhist detachment needs Confucian compassion to ground it in human connection. Bai Suzhen's tragedy and triumph lies in her refusal to be reduced to a lesson. She's a disruption, a catalyst, her scales glistening with all the contradictions that make us human. The story doesn't resolve these tensions, it lets them coil around each other like serpents in an eternal dance, leaving us to ponder where wisdom truly lies. From the misty canals of Jiangnan to the fiery spice of Sichuan, the white snake's tail slithers through China's regions, shedding old skins and growing new ones with each telling. In Hangzhou, where West Lake's willow-draped shores form the story's spiritual home, Bai Suzhen remains a tragic hero in her floodwaters, a righteous fury against oppression, her imprisonment beneath Leifeng Pagoda a somber reminder of love's cost. But journey west to Sichuan and the story erupts into vibrant spectacle. Sichuanese opera amplifies Xiaoqing's role, her green-scaled ferocity stealing scenes with acrobatic swordplay and biting humor. Here, Bai Suzhen's magic isn't subtle. It's a pyrotechnic display where silk sleeves whirl into tempests and face-changing performers flick through masks like pages of a living spellbook. The flood scene becomes pure theater actors suspended on wires, their flowing sleeves transforming the stage into a churning river while gongs crash like thunder. Down in Fujian's coastal villages, fishermen tell a gentler version. Bai Suzhen doesn't drown innocence. She parts the waters like a benevolent dragon goddess, guiding boats to safety. The pagoda's collapse isn't destruction but liberation, its bricks scattering into the sea to become the region's famous love stones, talismans young couples pocket for luck. Even Fahai softens here. Some puppet plays show him weeping as he seals Bai Suzhen away, his duty warring with regret. These adaptations reflect local values, where Sichuan prizes drama, Fujian emphasizes harmony with nature and the sea's unpredictable mercy. The Cantonese tradition takes yet another turn. Tea-house storytellers spin Bai Suzhen as a shrewd businesswoman, her apothecary thriving not just through magic but clever bargaining. Zhu Xian isn't a naive scholar but her eager apprentice, their romance blooming over shared ledgers as much as moonlit gardens. When Fahai interferes, it's not just celestial law at stake. He's a rival merchant in disguise, threatened by her success. This version mirrors Guangdong's mercantile history, where a woman's worth was measured in silver and wit as much as virtue. Most striking are the northern frontier retellings, where the white snake becomes protector rather than rebel. In Shaanxi's dusty temple murals, she coils around villages to shield them from Mongol raiders, her serpentine form spanning mountain ridges. The pagoda here is her willing prison, a bargain to spare Zhu Xian's people from heavenly wrath. These variations aren't mere embellishments, they're cultural fingerprints. A story about boundaries bends to fit the very borders it crosses, proving that legends like rivers carve new paths while keeping their essence. The legend of the white snake refuses to be confined to ancient scrolls. It slithers effortlessly into the modern era, reinventing itself across screens and stages with dazzling adaptability. Take the 2019 animated film White Snake, a visually stunning reimagining that catapulted Bai Suzhen into the realm of global pop culture. Gone are the muted ink wash tones of traditional paintings. This version bursts with hyper-saturated landscapes where cherry blossoms explode like fireworks and water shimmers with uncanny realism. But the film's brilliance isn't just in its artistry, it's in how it reframes Bai Suzhen's origin story. Here, she's not just a spirit who falls for a mortal, she's an amnesiac warrior navigating identity, her serpent form a metaphor for the parts of ourselves we suppress to fit in. The movie resonated far beyond China, its universal themes of self-discovery and forbidden love earning acclaim at Annecy, the Cannes of animation, proving that myths need no translation when they speak to the heart. Television dramas, too, have woven the tale into fresh tapestries. The 2018 series The Destiny of White Snake leans into the story's romantic tensions, painting Bai Suzhen and Zhu Xian's bond as one threaded with reincarnation and cosmic irony. Their love isn't a fluke, it's a destiny that loops across lifetimes, each iteration testing their willingness to defy fate. The show's lavish costumes and CGI-enhanced magic battles cater to modern tastes, but its soul remains rooted in that age-old question: how much would you sacrifice for a love that heaven itself condemns? Meanwhile, new legend of Madame White Snake 2019 takes a darker turn, casting Fahai not as a villain but as a tormented antihero, his rigid dogma masking a secret history with Bai Suzhen. These twists aren't just for shock value, they reflect contemporary audiences' hunger for moral complexity, for stories where heroes and villains wear shades of grey. Even gaming and digital media have embraced the legend. The mobile game Onmyoji features Bai Suzhen as a playable spirit, her attacks a ballet of venom and water, while webcomics reimagine her as a modern-day CEO navigating corporate intrigue, her boardroom adversaries no match for a millennium of cunning. These adaptations thrive because they honor the core of the myth while stretching its boundaries. A TikTok trend might recast Xiaoqing as a fierce bestie dropping truth bombs. A stage musical might turn The Flood into a show-stopping aria about liberation. The White Snake's power lies in her fluidity. She's a canvas for each generation's hopes and fears. Perhaps most striking is how these modern retellings democratize the legend. No longer confined to opera houses or scholarly texts, Bai Suzhen's story unfolds in bingeable episodes, meme-worthy clips, and fan art that splashes across social media. A teenager in Sao Paulo might cosplay as her for Comic-Con. A filmmaker in Lagos might draw parallels to Yoruba water deities. The tale's migration from local folklore to global phenomenon proves that some stories don't just endure, they evolve, resonating wherever love still battles prejudice, wherever the marginalized refuse to stay silent. The White Snake wasn't just a creature of Ming Dynasty fireside tales. She's a living emblem, her scales catching the light of every new medium that dares to tell her story. Walk through Hangzhou's West Lake today, and you'll find more than just willow branches brushing the water's surface. You'll step into a living painting where myth and reality blur. Every cobblestone path, every moonlit pavilion whispers Bai Suzhen's name, her legend etched so deeply into the landscape that tourists and pilgrims alike pause to trace their fingers over the Bridge of Broken Immortals, where she first offered Zhu Xian shelter from the rain. This isn't just a scenic spot, it's a shrine to love's enduring defiance where couples clasp locks to iron railings, their initials scratched beside centuries of others. The lake itself seems to remember, its waters shimmering with an otherworldly sheen at dusk, as if the white serpent's spirit still glides beneath the surface. Local guides spin tales with the cadence of ritual, pointing to the very spot where Fahai's temple once stood, now marked only by echoes and the occasional glint of an unearthed bronze brick in the mud. Artists have long been obsessed with capturing Bai Suzhen's duality, her serpentine grace and human tenderness. Classical ink-wash paintings depict her as a spectral figure trailing ribbons of mist, her form dissolving into scales at the edges, while contemporary street murals reimagine her as a fierce protector, coiled around modern cities like a guardian dragon. The legend thrives in porcelain too, with Ming-era vases showcasing her flood in delicate cobalt waves, and modern artisans crafting teapots where her likeness emerges from steam when poured. Even the humble paper-cut art of rural villages isn't immune. Scissors flicker to silhouette her dancing with Zhu Xian under a paper moon, their story reduced to its essence, two figures forever reaching across the divide. Literature stretches the tale further, molding it to each era's anxieties. Qing dynasty novelists embroidered subplots of court intrigue around Bai Suzhen's imprisonment, turning Fahai into a stand-in for corrupt officials. Mao-era propagandists briefly recast her as a proletarian hero, her flood a rebellion against feudal oppression. Today, young adult authors reimagine her as a time-traveling heroine, while poets distill her into haiku white scales glinting slash in the apothecary's lamp slash love brews bitter. The story's chameleon nature proves its power. It's less a fixed narrative than a vessel, filling with whatever truths a generation needs to tell. Then there's Leifeng Pagoda, its rebuilt form standing sentinel over the lake, a paradox of preservation and reinvention. The original structure collapsed in 1924, its bricks looted by locals who believed the powdered mortar could cure ailments or ward off spirits. Today's version is a steel-reinforced homage, complete with an elevator and LED light shows, yet pilgrims still weep at its base, pressing palms to the walls as if warmth might seep through from Bai Suzhen's trapped hands below. The government capitalizes on this devotion, promoting white snake tourism trails that loop from the pagoda to themed cafes serving serpent-shaped pastries. Commercial, perhaps, but also proof that the legend's heartbeat still thrums in China's cultural pulse, not as a relic but as a living, breathing force. Even the natural world bends to the myth. Certain tea varieties are now marketed as Bai Suzhen's tears, their silver needle leaves said to steep into liquid moonlight. Festival parades feature dancers undulating in scale-patterned bodysuits, their movements echoing the serpent's sinuous grace. And on quiet nights, when mist clings to West Lake's surface, it's easy to imagine the story isn't over, that every locked gate, every whispered vow, every ripple against the shore is another stitch in the tapestry, weaving Bai Suzhen's legacy into the fabric of the everyday. The legend endures not because it's frozen in time, but because it refuses to stay still. The legend of the white snake endures because it speaks to something fundamental in the human spirit, the audacity to love beyond boundaries, to challenge the very order of the universe for a chance at connection. This isn't just a story about a serpent who became a woman. It's a mirror held up to our own world, reflecting the timeless struggles between tradition and transformation, fear and understanding. Bai Suzhen's defiance isn't reckless, it's revolutionary. She refuses to accept that love should be confined by rules written in ancient scrolls, just as Zhu Xian's ultimate choice, to embrace her truth despite the cost, reminds us that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to stand by what matters most. What makes the tale resonate across centuries and cultures is its refusal to offer easy answers. Fahai isn't a cartoon villain twirling his mustache. He's a man convinced of his righteousness, a cautionary figure for anyone who's ever prioritized dogma over compassion. The flood Bai Suzhen unleashes isn't just a weapon, it's the inevitable eruption when oppression bottles up natural forces too long. Yet the story doesn't shy from showing the collateral damage, forcing us to grapple with the price of justice. Is rebellion justified if innocents suffer? Can love ever be wrong if it's genuine? These aren't just philosophical musings, they're questions that echo in today's debates about identity, acceptance, and who gets to draw the lines between us and them. Perhaps the most enduring lesson lies in the story's adaptability. From Cantonese marketplaces to Hollywood animation studios, every retelling molds the legend to its era's anxieties and aspirations. In some versions, Bai Suzhen is a feminist icon claiming agency. In others, a tragic figure sacrificed to societal expectations. Xiaoqing evolves from sidekick to soulmate, Fahai from zealot to sympathetic antagonist. The tale's chameleon-like nature proves its power. It's not a fossil to preserve, but a living conversation, continually inviting new voices to add their brushstrokes. So what's your white snake story? Maybe you first encountered it in a grandmother's fireside tale or through a viral TikTok cosplay. Perhaps you've debated whether Fahai was a villain or a victim of his own convictions, or found yourself moved by Zhu Xian's quiet bravery. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you seen adaptations that reimagined the legend in surprising ways? Do you think Bai Suzhen's choices were justified, or does the story leave you wrestling with its moral shades of grey? The beauty of folklore is that it belongs to everyone, and your perspective might just be the missing piece someone else needs to see the tale in a new light. After all, the best stories don't end when the pagoda crumbles. They live on in the conversations they spark, the hearts they stir, and the boundaries they dare us to cross.